At the start of this week's parasha, Parashat Pinchas, Hashem speaks the praises of Pinchas, Ben Elazar, Ben Aaron HaKohen. At the end of last week's parasha, the Jewish people were sinning big time. The head of the tribe of Shimon was leading this whole massive znut with the Benot Moab and the Benot Midian, with the Midianite women and the Moabite women, and they were doing Avodah Zarah, Baal Peor, just major terrible stuff. This Magefa, this plague is hitting the Jewish people, and comes along Pinchas, kills the head of the tribe of Shimon. He kills Zimri, kills the Midianite Cosby, and saves the day. And Hashem says, if not for him, I would have been kiliti at the Bnei Yisrael b'kinati. Hashem says, I would have destroyed the whole Jewish people with my wrath. And the language of kin'ah, of anger and wrath, is also the same letters of to be a kanai, to be a zealot. He says it's Pinchas' zealotry, it's his kin'ah that saved me from my anger, and that actually saved the day. And it's actually interesting because Bilam and Balak, they were trying to have this whole plan of Bilam destroying the Jewish people. And if he would have said the word kalem, to destroy them in one word, he would have destroyed the whole Jewish people. And comes along, Hashem uses the same language, velo chiliti, I would have destroyed the whole Jewish people if not because of Pinchas. And because of this, I'm gonna give him, hineni noten lo beriti shalom, I'm gonna give him the covenant of peace, which many of the Mefarshim explain it means that he got the kehuna, that even though Pinchas is the grandson of Aaron Kohen, for whatever particular reason right now, he is not a Kohen, meaning the standard approach is that he was born before the kehuna was given, and the kehuna goes based on genetics and parents and sons, but because he was already born, it only went to Aaron and Aaron's sons, but not to Aaron's grandsons, and that's why Pinchas didn't get to be a Kohen. There is a different approach that says he might have lost the kehuna because he killed somebody, and a Kohen can't do his avodah if he killed somebody, but here HaKadosh Baruch Hu is saying, you are getting the brit of kehuna. I'm going to make you a Kohen because of this great act that you did, this act of zealotry that saves the day. Awesome. Now, is an interesting Rashi at the start of the parasha. But before Rashi, if you look at the word Pinchas in this week's parasha, so Pinchas is spelled so far throughout the Torah, Pe Yud Nun Het Samech. So that's how you spell Pinchas, and it's spelled that way in our parasha as well, except the Yud in Pinchas is tiny. There's a Yud Ze'ira, a tiny Yud in Pinchas' name. So the question is, why is there a tiny Yud? So in general, it got me thinking, maybe we'll do another recording on this, but we've already spoken about the tiny Yud in the word Anav, when we spoke about Moshe being humble. We spoke about the tiny Aleph in Vayikra, and then this week's, and we said that went to Yoshua, and in this week's parasha, we actually see that Moshe does smicha on Yoshua and gives him his Kedushat to him. So there's actually relationships in those letters with the letter Yud when it comes to Moshe and Yoshua. But here we have another case of a small Yud in Pinchas. So the question is, why is there a small Yud? So I read a beautiful Dvar Torah from Rav Aharon Friedman. He's the Rosh Hashiva at KBY. He has some very cool things. He asked this question, why is there a small Yud? I'll give my answer in a second, but then I want to go to his, because I think his is actually much bigger. But first off, let's look at the pasuk. So it's the second pasuk of our parasha. It says, Pinchas ben Elazar ben Aaron Kohen, Heshiv et Hamati. Pinchas, the son of Elazar, the son of Aaron the Kohen, he removed he turned away my wrath. Okay. Asks Rashi the following question. Why does it tell us the whole lineage of Pinchas? Just say Pinchas ben Elazar. Why does it say Pinchas ben Elazar ben Aharon Kohen? We know that Elazar is Aharon's son. We know what's the point of all of this lineage. So here he tells. So it says Rashi, he's quoting a Gemara and a bunch of midrashim that say the same story. Lefi shayu ashvatim mevazim oto. Says Rashi, the other tribes started making fun of him. They were belittling him. They were upset at him. And why? What went wrong? So it says, they said about him, Hari item Ben Puti ze? Did you see this guy who's the son of a Puti? What does that mean, son of a Puti? So Puti is from the language, Shepitem avi imo agalim la'avodat kochavim. Because his mother's father, his grandfather, from his mother's side, his matrilineal grandfather, used to fatten up the egels, the calves, for Avodah Zarah. Meaning, he comes from a line of non-Jews, of the Avodah Zarah. His grandfather was a Puti, which means Shepitem, he fattened up the calves for Avodah Zarah. The Harag Nasi Shevet Misrael. And this guy who's a grandson, his mother's father was an Avodah Zarah, he now murders the head of a tribe of Israel? It's like what kind of terrible person is this? We're going to lose it. This is the guy that what's going on over here? So therefore, Lefichach ba'akatuv v'yahaso ahar Aharon Therefore, HaKadosh Baruch Hu comes along and says, to fight against all those scoffers, it says, Pinchas ben Elazar ben Aaron HaKohen. What are you talking about? This guy goes all the way back to Aaron HaKohen, one of the greatest, talking about the Briti Shalom, talking about the Kohen Gadol Aharon, the Ohev Shalom. Everybody loved Aaron HaKohen. He was the greatest. This guy is the grandson of Aharon. So the Torah goes out of its way to tell us where he came from, because people were making fun of him and they were trying to lower his stature and belittle him by saying he's the grandson of Ovdei Avodah Zarah. So part of me was thinking maybe the small yud is similar to the small yud we find by Moshe Rabbeinu. By Moshe Rabbeinu, when it comes to the word anav, yud, he's humble. He humbled himself so much, he made a small yud. He humbled himself so much that we spoke about in the past, he made a small aleph in Vayikra. So here over here, Pinchas is not humbling himself, but rather they're humbling him, or they're making fun of him, they're belittling him, they're making him smaller, but maybe the smaller yud over here is coming to signify that Pinchas is much lower than he really should be. So therefore, Kadosh Baruch Hu, to show the contrast, they're making fun of him. He's hinting to that in the small yud, but HaKadosh Baruch Hu is expanding his name. Pinchas ben Elazar ben Aaron HaKohen. Look at how holy Pinchas actually is. Look at how great this guy is. Okay, that's what I would have said. But says this Rav Aaron Friedman, unbelievable stuff. Okay, so people get ready. We have some big hidushim. Okay, what does it mean that they called him a Ben Puti? What do you mean Ben Puti? What does that mean? The son of a Puti. So he said, Puti means a person who is mefatem dagalim, who does avodah zarah, fattens up the animal. Okay. We had actually mentioned in an earlier recording, we're speaking about Yosef marrying Osnat bat Potifera, that there's some opinions that say, Rashi says that Potifera is Potifar, and maybe Poti is also Puti of the part. They would fatten up the cows, the bulls, and maybe Potifera, they would fatten up for the Ra god, which is the sun god in Egypt. So again, this concept of Poti, this language we find in Egyptian, of people who were fattening up Avodah Zarah. But if we actually back it up in the Torah, Rashi actually explains much more. What is this whole Puti idea all about? Okay, so if we go to Rashi, back in Parashat Va'era, we have to go all the way back to the book of Shmot, and we actually had a whole recording on this earlier this year. If you go back to Parashat Va'era, it starts when Moshe is told to go back, save the Jewish people after the burning bush. Moshe and Aharon go back to save the Jews. And all of a sudden, the Torah takes a break and lets us know who is Moshe and who is Aharon. Because we didn't get all the details, but we know the details because we learn Torah every year. But in Shemot, it's the first time we really go through the lineage of where did Moshe and Aharon come from. But if you actually look at those psukim do a lot of foreshadowing to the book of Bamidbar. Because they don't only speak about Moshe and Aharon, they also speak about Korach, and they also speak about Pinchas. Because if we go back to Parashat Va'era, this is Perek Vav, if you go to Pasuk Kaf Gimel, so it speaks about Aharon. It tells you about who did Aharon marry. So it says, Vayikach Aharon et Elisheva bat Aminadav ahot Nachshon. So Aharon married Elisheva, the daughter of Aminadav, who's the sister of Nachshon. And we actually spoke a lot about how Aharon's kids, Nadav and Avihu, who actually have a relationship to Pinchas as well, according to Kabbalah. But Nachshon and the relationship to Aharon's kids, what they learned from their uncle. But Aharon marries Elisheva, and they have 4 kids, says the Pasuk. V'taled lo et Nadav, v'et Avihu, v'et Elazar, v'et Itamar. They have 4 sons. Then the next pasuk talks about Korach, interesting. And then the pasuk after that, pasuk Kafei says, Ve'elazar ben Aaron, what did Elazar do? He lakach lo mi benot Putiel. He went and he took mi benot Putiel lo leisha. He took one of the daughters of Putiel as a wife. Vateled lo et Pinchas. And they gave birth to Pinchas. So we already see back in Va'era that, why is he called the Ben Puti? Because his mother was the daughter of Putiel. So who is Putiel? What are you talking about, Putiel? So if you open up, we look at Rashi. Rashi over there says, Mizera Yitro Shipitem Agalim Avodah Zarah. So Rashi now makes up the second part of our Rashi by us. So Rashi over there says, who is Putiel? It's Yitro. Because Yitro was the guy that was Oved Avodah Zarah, who would fatten up the calves for Avodah Zarah. Because we know Yitro was the Kohen Midian. He was the priest of Midian. He was doing the idol worship. There's even ideas in the Midrashim that he had tried out every Avodah Zarah until Moshe came and convinced him of Judaism being true, until eventually, hopefully, he converts in Yitro, according to many opinions. But that only happens later. Earlier on in his life, he had tried every Avodah Zarah. That's why he's called the Kohen of Midian. So he was the one that was Mefatem. He was the original guy called Putiel, which is the Kohen who's basically fattening up the animals. So that's what Rashi says. That's one opinion. The other opinion actually relates it to Yosef. Umi zera Yosef shepitpet beyitzro. Putiel can also relate to pitpet. That Yosef was the one that was able to hold back from his Yetzirah, which also connects to our story, because the whole story of Pinchas, we have Zimri messing up with the Znut, but we know Yosef is the one that's able to control his Yetzirah and does not give in to Eshet Potifar. So there's an idea that he actually comes, that somehow this daughter has relationships to both Yosef and to Yitro at the same time. So this lineage is like kind of mixing into Pinchas. Also, we can relate it, like we said, to the concept of Osnapa Potifera, again the Puti idea over there as well. So we have this Yosef layer as well. But let's put the Yosef on the side. Let's focus on the Yitro. So Rashi Bayas says this whole concept of Putiel is taking us to Yitro, who is doing the Avodah Zarah, but asks this Rav Aaron Friedman. He goes, but I don't understand. How is Yitro Putiel? Yitro is the Kohen Midian. What's the connection to Putiel? So he says, unbelievable chidush. If we go back to Parashat Noach, we have Noach's kids, and we tend to focus a lot on Shem because we come from Shem. Yefet we like as well because the whole Western world comes from there. We have a lot of relationships to them nowadays, and a lot of the Divrei Torah we give nowadays. But there was another son. There was the son who had sinned big time with his father, saw his father's nakedness, whatever that meant. His name was Ham. He's the one that gets cursed. If you look at Ham's kids, Uvnei Ham, Cush, Umitzrayim, Ufut, Uknan. So Ham has Cush, Ham has Mitzrayim, and he has Canaan. So we have the land of Israel, Canaan. We have Mitzrayim, Egypt, where the whole story is taking place. We have Cush, which is the southern part of Africa, not too far from there. And then we have Put. So one of the 4 kids of Ham is Put. So he says, wait a second, look at the names of this family. We have Canaan, we have Mitzrayim. He says, what about Cush? When did we meet Cush? We met Cush with Tzipporah. Remember Tzipporah's called Hakushi? Moshe's wife, according to when we said Miriam is speaking her Avak Lashon Hara about Moshe's wife, so according to the standard opinion, she's talking about Tzipporah, and she calls Tzipporah the Isha Kushit. What's the Isha Kushit? It's the woman who came from Cush, or at least at the very least, she's from the Bnei Cham, maybe has the skin color, the darker color, for part of what was considered to be the lakabe ora, part of the punishment of Cham, got a darker color over there. So this Isha Kushit from Cush is Tzipporah. But what are you talking about? Tzipporah comes from Midian. So is it Midian? Is it Cush? Like, what's going on? So you have to have a little bit of geography here, but let's look at the geography. We have ourselves Egypt. That's like on the top area of Africa. Cush is somewhere lower in Africa. Now the question, and Canaan is by the land of Israel. Where is Midian? Where did Moshe run away from? So Midian, when he's running away from Egypt, he's running away towards the east, towards the Sinai Peninsula. And Midian's going to be actually pretty large. They're a bunch of nomads, Bedouins who are going to travel back and forth. They're going to go all the way up towards the eastern side of the Jordan, because in our parshas now, when we're going to go fight with them, we're on the eastern side of the Jordan. But when Moshe ran away, he probably was a lot more south, and that's why the academics say that they probably were Bedouins that were going back and forth. So from the east of the Jordan all the way south towards the east side of the Sinai Peninsula, the Sinai Desert. So from Egypt towards the east, we're going to get to the land of Canaan. Now the question is, where was Put? So he says Put was probably in a very similar vicinity, because if you look, I was looking at some of the websites that try to like show maps. So they put Put like on like the western side, the eastern side of Africa. But basically, Ham's kids took over Africa, Sinai, and the land of Israel. That's where Ham is. So says this rabbi. But if you look at chronologically on how they were born, so we have ourselves Cush, which will be like the southern part of Africa, go north towards Mitzrayim, and then if you skip towards the 4th kid, Canaan, you have the land of Israel. What's in the middle? He says that's the Sinai Peninsula. That's probably Put. And that's probably also where Midian is. So Midian is kind of living in the same area as the kids of Ham. And also, Midian, the Torah tells us that already in times of Yosef, when Yosef was sold into slavery, he was sold into slavery, and he was sold to the Midianim, these Socharim Midianim, these Midianite sellers. But how do we have Midianite sellers right now? Midian is the son of Avram from his later wife, from Keturah. So it's a younger son is Midian, and now we're just 2 generations later. It's the grandson, Yosef's generation. So we're telling me that the Midian is this great nation. So probably, he says, what happens is that Midian married into the people that were living there. So who's living there by the Sinai? We have the Putim, we have the Kushim. We also know that the Yitro, the Midianite, was an advisor for Mitzrayim, because these are all the Bnei Ham. They're all hanging out in this area. They're all marrying into each other. We know when it comes to to Esav's kids. We spoke in the past. How did Esav grow to be such a big tribe so quickly? Because he married into Seir. He married into the non-Jews. This rabbi brings a footnote over here that Amalek also, that Eliphaz married into the Amalek tribes as well when he had his own Amaleks, but he was marrying into other ancient people. So the idea is that probably Midian married into the Putim. He married into the Kushim. And that's why when they're making fun of Tzipporah, they're calling her a Kushit, or when they're making fun by us of Pinchas, and they're calling him a Ben Puti, because why was the father called Putiel? Why is Yitro called Putiel? Because as Kohen Midian, he's the Kohen for all these people. He's the Kohen for the Kushim, he's the Kohen for the Putim, because they've all became one big nation under Midian. We even saw that Balak, who was the head of Moab, he also was from Midian. So we see this intermingling of the people. So when it says the Putiel, it makes so much sense historically that it's talking about Yitro, because he was part of the tribe that had married into and intermixed with the Putim. So with this, we can pick up our storyline. Where did Pinchas come from? So Moshe Rabbeinu runs away from Egypt, comes to the house of Yitro, and he writes that Minastam, with the time, Moshe was able to inspire everyone, to cut everybody, and ultimately converts the house of Yitro. Now, one of the people that he converts is going to be Yitro's daughter, Tzipporah. He's going to marry her. And then a different daughter of Putiel, a different daughter of Yitro, is going to be going to be this mother of Pinchas. She's going to marry Elazar. They're going to give birth to Pinchas, and that's going to be where they came from. So this Kushit that Tzipporah is, and this Ben Puti of Pinchas, they're really coming from the same family. And with this Rabbi Friedman tries to explain, okay, now what was the small yud, or what was the gnai? What were they making fun of when they were young? You're a Ben Puti, you're a Ben Puti. So he actually writes, now this is fascinating. He says that Pinchas, he quotes from the Dat Mikra. The Dat Mikra is like the academic reading of the Torah, which is like a lot of like history and archaeology. So it's the Dat Mikra on Parshat Va'era, Perek Vav, Pasuk Kaf Hey. So it says over there that P in ancient Egyptian acts like the letter Hey in Hebrew. The Hey Yediyah, the P is like Ha, and he says Nehas is another way to say Cush, meaning the Cushites, the Cushite land, the children of Cush of Ham's son. So P Nachas means Ha Kushi, the Kushite. So just like Tzipporah was called the Kushit, the Isha Kushit, he's being called HaKushi, which means in a certain sense they're making fun of their ethnicity, their skin color, where they're coming from. There's a certain this guy over here, he's like a convert over here. His mother, and his mother's father, they're a bunch of Kushites, and they're a bunch of Putites, and it's basically making fun of where they came from. And he actually brings down an interesting pshat. So remember when we said that Pinchas was not a Kohen to begin with? So again, the standard pshat is he wasn't a Kohen because he was born after the Kohen, he was born before the Kohanim went based on the genealogy. But he gives now a different opinion. Why was Pinchas originally not a Kohen? So he quotes here the Torah Shlema, quoting the Rav Moshe Mikutzi. Rav Moshe Mikutzi was one of the Rishonim. He's one of the Baalei Tosfot. And he says, you know why Pinchas could not be Kohen? Because his mother was a convert. His mother was the daughter of Yitro, and the halacha is that if his father, Elazar the Kohen, marries his mother who's a convert, the son is a halal. A halal is a person who is pasul from being a Kohen. He can't be a Kohen because his mother is a convert. A totally different approach to why not. But he can't until this part in our parasha, or the very end of last week's parasha, when Zimri ben Salu takes from the head of the tribe of Shimon, this great scion from the house of Shimon, he picks up Cosby, the Midianite, brings her in front of Moshe. And we said in last week's recording, he comes to Moshe and he says, Moshe, I don't understand. I'm not, is she mutar or asur? If you tell me that she's asur to me, bat Yitro, your Midianite woman, who said you're allowed to be married to your Midianite? You have your Kushit, I want my Kushit. You have your Puti, I want my Puti. And at that point, the son of the other daughter of Yitro, meaning after he's seeing Zimri make fun of Moshe's wife Tzipporah, that's his aunt. So he's saying, my aunt is from Yitro, my mother is from Yitro. What are you talking about? You want to just take a Midianite and do znut in front of everybody? That's not how it works. It's not based on where you come from. It's not your ethnicity. That's not what the problem is. The problem is, what's your kavanah? Your kavanah is znut. It's sexual immorality. You know what my kavanah is? My mother's kavanah was? What my aunt Tzipporah's kavanah was? They wanted to become converts and become under the tachat HaShechina, the kanfei HaShechina. They wanted to join HaKadosh Baruch Hu. They wanted to join the Jewish people. So he says at that point, when Pinchas steps it up, so this person that everyone's making fun of, the Ben Puti, the Kushi, this person that everyone's making fun of, Hashem says, no, this guy is awesome. And Hashem elevates him to the level of being a Kohen. Now you're going to get it. Even though your mother was a convert, and even though you came about after we already you were born before we gave out the Keuna, and it should be too late. No. By you stepping it up and you doing your Ma'asim where exactly where they're supposed to be, you have the Yichus of a Kohen. And not only that, some of the Mefarshim say his kids are even going to become Kohanim Gedolim, and they're going to come out of him in future generations. So he says we could even say that, the Bnei Cham, the children of Cham, the cursed son Cham, his great-great-great-great-grandkids through Pinchas are actually going to be in the Holy of Holies, in the Beit HaMikdash. That's how far you can get with the proper ma'asim, with the proper choices. That was the koch of his mother, that was the koch of his aunt, and that's the koch of Pinchas himself, stepping it up for a Kadosh Baruch Hu. So to close, says this Rabbi Friedman, to close off his idea, he says that that's also why in our pasuk, so they're all making fun of him. Oh, you're a Ben Puti, you're a Ben Puti. So he says they try to minimize the letter Yud in his name. Why? Because we said the letter Yud is Pi Nechas, means the Kushi. He says no. Let's learn the different. And then in the Midrash Sechel Tov says, what does Pinchas stand for? As opposed to Pi Nechas, the Egyptian, let's take it to the Jewish way. Pinchas without the Yud will be Shepana Vechas al Kevodo. He was Pinchas, he was Pana, he turned, he saw what was going on, V'chas al kevod yotzro, and he cared about the disgrace that was happening to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and he steps it up and he saves the day. So by making the letter Yud smaller, it's kind of like erasing the letter Yud, so it's no longer going to be the Egyptian flavor to the name, but it's going to be the Jewish flavor to the name. And that's also why Rashi is going to come along and say, now we're going to be a chesem all the way to Aaron HaKohen. Because yes, we have this part that comes from Yitro, which was a very, very holy part too. Let's not step that down. Yitro himself also is going to step it up. And we see that all of Yitro's kids step it up. But we're also going to now be a chesem all the way back to Aaron HaKohen. So even if according to the Rav Moshe Mikutzi, he couldn't do it halachically because of the level of halal, but now with his ma'asim he can. And now we're going to say, you know where that really did come from? Let's now look through his patriarchal line. Let's look through his father. He's the son of Elazar, who's the son of Aaron HaKohen, and he has that yichus as well. Shabbat Shalom.